So just tell me, when you were growing up, what did you want to be?
That is my favorite question. When I was growing up and I was very young, I wanted to be a kindergarten teacher. And after that dream, I wanted to be a poet. I've always been a writer. I've always loved writing. So I had two very different and unique careers as a kid. I grew up and I did take creative writing in college and I became a writer. But there was always a spark in me to do more. I mean, I remember playing with Barbies growing up, and my Barbies didn't just hang out at a fake pool. They were plotting things. They were creating things. I mean, they were really busy Barbies. So I always knew I wanted something more.
I relate to that. I relate to the very practical approach to Barbie playing. I relate to that 100%. But so now that you have been building your personal brand, and yes, it's very important, especially when you have a business that doesn't really exist, right? So you kind of have to create that awareness beyond the Craigslist ads. So as far as, Jen GLANTZ personal brand, you want to be known as a bridesmaid for hire, you want to be known as an entrepreneur, you want to be known as a quirky public figure, influencer in a certain sphere. What's your goal?
It's interesting because for so much of your life, you're always taught to be just one thing. People would say to me, Jen, just do one thing, be one person, but I never felt okay with that. And that's why I don't think I did well in the corporate world, because I couldn't just do my job. I wanted to know about other people's jobs. So even now as an entrepreneur, people always say, oh, you're just the bridesmaid for hire. And it's like, no, I'm so many things. I've been an author. I published 3 books. I have a podcast. I'm a motivational speaker. I teach courses. So I do a lot. And I don't think my brand fits into an influencer category or just an entrepreneur category. I think it's a grow with Jen category. I've always, since I started my blog in 2010, I've always just taken everything that I've experienced, all my mistakes, and I've bottled them up in different ways, from blog posts to podcasts to courses to coaching, as a way of saying, hey, I put myself out there. I've made the mistakes. Let me help you. So I don't even think that my personal brand fits into a box, and I don't think anyone else's should. When I teach my personal branding classes, people are like, well, I've worked in this industry for 10 years and now I want to pivot and I'm scared. No, you should be open to it. You are a human being who is supposed to be so many things. Now we just have to package it together.
I love that. And I agree with that. But how do you package multiple things together?
I basically just have looked at myself and look at what I do. And I've said, okay, you know what, Jen, you are the following things. You are an entrepreneur, an author, a podcast host, and a creator. And when I meet people on the street, it's often hard to say all of that without them being overwhelmed. So I usually say, look, I run my own business, and my business involves a couple of different things. It involves book writing, podcasting, being a bridesmaid for hire, and offering courses and coaching. So it does take a little bit of explaining, but you see that more and more. I feel like I meet people all the time who are like, well, I'm a this, but I also am a this and this. So when I teach personal branding, I always say, make your sentence of who you are have commas. So I am an entrepreneur who started Bridesmaid for Hire, and I'm a podcast host, 3-time author, and course creator. That organizes a sentence with the and the commas.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because you said, the idea is grow with Jen, right? So that's the overarching idea, which gives you so much liberty and power to pivot in however way you want as you also grow, right? As you explore different things. I think it's interesting. But a lot of people are opposed to the concept of personal branding. A lot of people think that it's an exercise in narcissism, right? And I'm sure you've heard that because I've heard that many times. So what do you say to that when people are like, oh, it's just people who are hunting for likes and views and fans, and that's not me because I'm above that. What do you say to those people?
I say you have it all wrong. Personal branding at its core is understanding yourself and your value and how to communicate that. I think that when people think of personal branding, they confuse it with influencer marketing and influencer strategy. I'm not telling anybody to go create an Instagram page. All I'm saying is, can you actually explain who you are and communicate your value for whatever your goal is? And everyone's goal is different. So I think people confuse personal branding with social media. Social media is one tiny little piece of personal branding, but there's so much more. And the average person has absolutely no idea how to talk about themselves. They stress about talking about themselves. That's personal branding.
So how do you help people, or do you help people understand then the essence of who they are? Because as you said, that is step one. And I fully agree with you. We often say, and we see it, a lot of people say, I'm a personal branding coach. I will teach you how to post on LinkedIn. but social media is just a very small component. LinkedIn is a smaller component yet, right? So that does not a personal brand make. So what is your advice to people, or what was your journey in understanding, what is the essence of, who we are? How do we find that?
You can't post on LinkedIn if you don't know yourself. So I call this in my course, section 1 is called Take Inventory on You. And I force people to sit there, and it's hard. It's really tough work. I force them to ask themselves questions that they never have asked. And I do this every single year on my birthday. On my birthday, I go sit outside by myself and I do this. I ask people, what are your strengths? And I'm not asking you for words. I'm asking you for putting your strengths in motions. So I'm a good listener, and then I want you to explain how. I ask people for their weaknesses and how they're going to improve them. I ask them for their accomplishments, their life goals. So taking inventory on yourself is you opening up and being honest about questions you've either lied about on job interviews, or you just don't ask yourself. If you can't tell me who you are and what you're good at and what you're not good at, then you have no clue who you are. And by the way, these things change on a yearly basis. And in 2020, they've changed 10 times, So we have to go through the motions of understanding ourselves and translating our past experiences into value that can maybe be prevalent in different industries or different projects we want to start.
I find that a lot of people don't do that because, well, first of all, just that whole exercise in self-awareness is daunting, right? It can get emotional. You start digging deep. It's a process. That's number one. But also number two, a lot of people are afraid, I find, of realizing what they really want to be doing, because it's not so easy. We have bills to pay, we have responsibilities, right? I have a lot of people that say, well, in my ideal world, I would be, let's say, a TV show host. That's my big passion. I want to be on camera, but I have bills to pay, so I have to keep my corporate job. And now that I've opened up this can of worms, well, now you can't put the lid back on, because then that's all you start thinking about. Yeah. So what is your recommendation? What do you usually say to people in that case?
One, I say, look, it's going to be an emotional process, and I push people to be honest. So throughout the course, I have checkpoints when I'm like, wait, I know you lied, so let's do this over. So I force you to be honest. That's step one, because usually we lie to ourselves, and you definitely lie to yourself the first time you try to do this. But two, look, I'm never, ever going to tell anyone to quit their job. I have bills to pay. I never quit my job to start my side hustle. I worked full-time for years while I was building Bridesmaid for Hire. So I always tell people it's okay to know that you want something different, but also how you're going to start now with baby steps. So if all of a sudden you realize you want to be a TV host, but you have bills to pay and you're working in finance, well, you have to figure out, okay, how many extra hours do you have every day? And don't try to tell me you don't. You do. Look at your phone time, how much time you're on your phone on Instagram all day. You have an hour to spare. Start building it now. So I'm realistic. I don't want people to just throw away their lives, but I want you to mess up your life, which I think is a little bit different.